And welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate you all so much for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if it's one of your favorite places to catch podcasts later on in the week. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host Kelcey, as we get ready for the very busy October burst of sports coming up. We have baseball, we got the football season continuing a quarter of the way through, basketball's around the corner. Fisticuffs is going to be very busy. We got a lot going on this month, but most importantly, because MLB silly, 6 hours ago, the MLB postseason is officially underway from 6 hours and 24 hours ago, I should say. So 30 hours ago.
Yeah, we're here. We've already had games, 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. games on a Tuesday. I mean, Wednesday, whatever it is. I honestly stop at MLB. Like at this point in time, what are we doing? Like, you've already. I'm okay with the weekend games early. Thursday games during the season early. Just that's a joke. We can't do that anymore, right? But then postseason games, your biggest TV getter, and you're gonna do it on a 1 p.m. on a work day for everybody going into October. Like, what are we doing here?
Well, without further ado, I think that's a good way to lead us right into our first part of the show. That is the tip-off brought to our good friends over at SeatGeek. Use code BellyUpSports for $20 off your first set of tickets. That is code BellyUpSports. And as you mentioned, the MLB postseason is here. We got 1 p.m. games. We have the bracket is fully set, is ready to go. Some games have already been being played. Guardians losing to the Tigers earlier today. The Cubs getting one over on the Padres. As you do have the Reds taking on the Dodgers as well. So, you know what, we're getting to that part of the season. We're getting to kind of that nitty-gritty. And of course, the Red Sox and the Yankees, can't forget the very intentional, unintentional AL divisional matchups in the first round. I know it's not on purpose, but it might be a little on purpose. But as we take a look at the bracket now, games are still going. As you mentioned, it's wild card. It's best 2 out of 3. So these go by pretty quickly, especially in certain cases. But as you look at the bracket right now, we won't go too deep into the weeds because, as we mentioned, it changed. But who are a couple of the teams you're looking at right now? It's like, yeah, that team might be hosting up some hardware in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I still think Philly is one of those teams. Seattle has been one of those teams all season. It's hard to count out the Dodgers just given their team, and then one more AL team just to throw out there, the Yankees, because it's still the Yankees. Unfortunately, they got to figure out Aaron Judge in the playoffs first, but yeah. I think those four are my favorites, 2 from each side, just to kind of make it easy. But yeah, there's a couple teams that I have a lot of hope for, and then there's a couple teams I'm like, well, you made it here. Congratulations. Let's move on.
For the AL, I agree. Or with the NL, I agree. The Phillies, Dodgers, really hard to go against them. I know the Brewers have been awesome, but those other two have some postseason backing behind it as well. If the Padres get by, I think the Padres and the Cubs series is very interesting. Whoever gets out of that one, I think could be a real thorn in the side for everybody, especially the Brewers in the next round. The star power of the Dodgers, the complete game of the Cubs. I look at the AL. That's interesting. I feel like the Tigers could be a real threat to everybody. The problem is the biggest thorn in their side is the team they're playing in round 1 in the Guardians. You have the best pitcher in baseball, but for some reason, the best pitcher in baseball, really good staff, really good hitting team, but the power of friendship and Jose Ramirez with the Guardians just seems to be a thorn in their side that's come back from the depths of nowhere to not only get into the playoffs, but take the division crown. So that's if Detroit can get by them, which they're off to a good start, 1-0. Scooball was dealing today. If they get by, I think they're going to cause some problems with just that staff. You mentioned the Yankees. If Aaron Judge is 80% of his regular season self, they could go on a run. So that's kind of where I'm looking at as well. Seattle's very, very. I'm always interested with Seattle. Like I just always wonder how they're going to click in the postseason. So I'm very excited to see what pulls off on that side. But I would say the Tigers are still kind of my sleeper team, and then the Blue Jays, you can't count out the number 1 seed in that case. But yeah, you really can't count them out. But I'm really curious to see what ends up happening with the Tigers if they get by the Guardians.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, the big break, the historic crash for the Tigers in the month of September, and then the historic rise for the Guardians in the month of September. And how much does that carry over? I always talk about when you have a big emotional release because of a celebration. Well, the Guardians had 2 emotional releases on 2 walk-offs going into the playoffs, and then they lose today's game against the Tigers. I think that is a sign of what I was concerned about. But the Tigers didn't look unbeatable. Granted, Scooball was lights out. They got Casey Mize tomorrow, who has been better than previous, but he's not the former top pick he once was. He's not the kid coming out of Auburn who was a top 10 pick for everybody. He's a good pitcher, but has he been good enough? Not lately. So the Guardians still have a chance. That's going to be a very interesting matchup, just top to bottom. But yeah, I don't know. I like what you said about San Diego and the Cubs, though. I do think those two teams are interesting because they're kind of the young, naive. Let's see what happens if we keep going, which naivety in the playoffs always works out well. You don't really get beat because you're a young team. 9 times out of 10, you upset the older, more experienced teams. So we'll see.
Exactly. It's definitely going to be an interesting postseason run. Let us know down in the comments who you all think is going to go to the World Series and might be hosting up some hardware at the end of October. But we're now transition to from baseball to the gridiron is college football with some big matchups over the weekend and some big ones kind of pile off that. We're going to start with Oregon taking on Penn State in the whiteout in Happy Valley. Penn State 3.5-point favorites, goes to double overtime. And Penn State just comes up a day late and $1 short, losing by 3 points off a Drew Aller overtime interception. And Oregon now might be the number 2 team in the country moving forward at this point. So they're right up there. But looking at this too, they're facing Indiana this week, where I think the winner of that game is going to be the number 1 team in the nation. I think after this weekend when they play them, but we'll start with Penn State. They are who we thought they were. Bad break. Oregon's just really good. How are we feeling about Penn State after that game? I think they're still fine. They're still a playoff team. They're still in the thick of it. Oregon's just really good, and you lost by an overtime thing. The Drew Aller throwing the pick late is kind of considering he's supposed to be the guy carrying you this year, and he hasn't been lights out. He's been fine, but in the biggest moment, there always seems to be some shenanigans. He's like Daniel Jones with an extra gear, I guess, with a little bit more mustard on his arm. So I'm curious with that, but I think they'll be fine. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on Penn State moving forward. Or are they who we thought they were, or let's not overreact?
They hadn't played anybody to this point. It's not like they got the doors beat off of them by Oregon. Like, that was a great game. That was an absolutely outstanding game. It does make me concerned because James Franklin in big games only has 4 wins and 20 some odd losses. And that's in actual ranked matchups. That's not great, especially top 10 ranked matchups. You can't, if you're going to be Penn State and you're going to have to go beat Ohio State, you're going to have to beat Oregon again to win the Big 12 or Big 10. We can't do this every time. This can't just keep happening. It's not the team's fault at the end of the day. Yes, Drew Aller threw a bad interception, but they did a great job fighting and keeping up with Oregon and really, at times, dominating this game. So Oregon was really struggling to get into the game. And I think that's it's a double overtime loss at the end of the day, but Penn State played well. Now there's a conversation to be had about the fact that this was a whiteout, and we know what comes with the whiteout when it comes to statistics and the opposing team's ability to score and the home team's ability to hold on defense. Those stats do matter. You're not going to have the whiteout if you play Oregon again. That's unfortunately, that ship has sailed. But yeah, I think Penn State against a lot of other teams this season is going to be very fun to watch. I think they're still good. I just don't, they're in that same category they've been for me forever, which is, so for me, they're exactly who I thought they were, which is a great 8-14 team, somewhere in that realm, not like 8 wins, 14 losses, ranked 8 to 14th when it comes to the playoff rankings. They're going to be in the playoffs just because by nature of it, unless they lose 3, they're going to be there. So I think they're good. It's just getting over the hump. And I think on the flip side, the Ducks, man, that's Dan Lanning's team is don't just negate Dan Lanning anymore. I think he's proven enough to enough people. He's got the juice to get his team over the hump. And those mummy jerseys, that was sick.
Say that without juice, Dan Lanning, I think he might have more than just the juice. We need to have an investigation into his nostrils sometimes. He's way too amped up 24/7. That is not all natural. But
hey, we are not CSI, sir. We don't have the free powder.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm not saying I'm gonna go look, but somebody should go look. I think if Penn State was in the Big 12 or the ACC, this wouldn't be a conversation necessarily, because they would just be like, "Oh, you're the best team in one of the lesser of the 4 major conferences, unfortunately, but you're still awesome." Problem is, you got to play Michigan when they were good for those 2 years, and then you got Ohio State perpetually. Now Oregon, and if you go into the SEC, you got to deal with those teams. Like we saw last year, they did win a playoff game. They are the best of the rest. The problem is they're being compared to the best, and they're kind of left to rest. It's just a very unfortunate spot there. The bridesmaid and never the bride. If they get in the playoffs, they could be annoying, but I'd still think that running back room's awesome. The defense is solid. Drew Aller can make plays. I mean, they were down and died 2 scores in the 4th quarter and came back to get that to overtime. But like you said, they are kind of who we thought we were. We were running away with that Oregon plus 3.5. Like there was no doubts about that when we saw that. Oregon's a well-oiled machine. Dante Moore gives them a little extra juice than they had compared to Dylan Gabriel last year, I think. So the offense has a little bit more to build off of with that Dan Lanning defense and the ability to run the ball. Oregon's going to be a problem, but them in Indiana this week, I'm excited for that one because I want to see how Indiana matches up, because I know last year there was the frauds should have been in the playoffs. Kind of got clobbered for 3 quarters before making it close in the fourth. This team's much better, I believe. I think Fernando Mendoza gives them a whole nother dynamic offensive element. So I'm curious to see how him and Dante Moore going head to head. I'm curious to see how Signetti responds too, because he is, I don't want to say petty because that feels like I'm underselling it by a mile, but he is the type of guy that I can see trying to come into this one to make a statement. So I think the winner of Oregon, Indiana, because they both have top 10 wins on their resume, should be the number 1 ranked team in the country, arguably. We'll see. There's leeway. It changes week to week, obviously, but if Oregon beats Penn State and Indiana back-to-back weeks, throw them at number 1. I know Ohio State has that great win over Texas, but they haven't really faced as much since then. I mean, Washington's fine, but when you get 2 top 10 wins like that, we do the first. I think you could propel them to number 1 if they get it done.
There you go. Sorry. Talking to myself here. But what's crazy about this is you have a team like Penn State who has to face Indiana later in the year, has to face Ohio State still. That's going to be tough regular season-wise. Oregon doesn't have to face Ohio State. So if they get past Indiana, they have a really good option for being a 1-2 seed here until the division or conference championship, which they would probably play Ohio State if Ohio State wins out. On the flip side of that, Indiana kind of is in the same category where until later in Penn State and Oregon this week, they're pretty good for a little bit. But it's a team that has an uphill battle. So I don't think Indiana gets that nod for number 1 if they win. But I think Oregon should have a conversation. It should be at least a split vote is what I look at. Maybe not a full unanimous Ohio State anymore because of the fact Ohio State, we've seen what Texas is right now. Texas is not that great of a team. They were ranked high, but yeah, okay, I can rank anybody high in the postseason, in the preseason, and it doesn't matter. Honestly, it shouldn't matter come week 4 if they've been not good. So that strength of schedule should be a lot lower. Like, yeah, they were a number 1 team in the nation when you beat them. Okay, but they're actually like a 75th best team in the nation. Like, let's calm down on giving them credit. Maybe that's mean, but I don't trust Texas right now at all. But yeah, I don't know. I like this matchup. I love what Oregon was able to do in Happy Valley, but I'm excited like you are for Indiana coming up, and then I'm excited to see what Penn State can do coming up to answer back from this, because I think they have to answer back is the big thing for Penn State. You got to be able to answer, ring the bell, if you will, show up with your lunch pail. I need to see that mentality from Penn State going forward.
Absolutely. You can't let one loss turn into 2, and you can't let it turn into 3, so on and so forth. And they play UCLA next, so that's I would say that's a take the over and take them to cover at this point. That's one thing James Franklin has historically done, is beat the what out of teams he's heavily favored by. I don't know if he does it on purpose or if it's a coincidence, except when he plays Bowling Green and I actually take him to cover and then he doesn't. But that's another issue. But let us know down below if you all think
that's the Eddie George effect.
That's a good point. That might be exactly what it is. But I expect that we're feeling good about that one against UCLA, unless Nico can, no, I'm not. I can't even think about it. Sorry, UCLA. There's not a whole lot of ways out on that one. But speaking of Nico, former SEC player, we now are going to transition to the SEC as we have Alabama taking on Georgia yet again. And yet again, Kirby Smart with the thorn in his side, with the exception of the national championship game, just can't seem to get past that darn former team of his with Alabama, getting the nod over Georgia. Big win for the Alabama program, considering that Florida State loss and then the shaky week 2 performance. Kalen DeBoer's head was on a spike across Mobile and across all of Alabama, honestly, except for the little small section of Auburn. It's like, no, keep him. It's cool. But I think at that point, big win for him. Ty Simpson was awesome. Kirby Smart, once again, he's an elite head coach, but for some reason, that's the thorn in his side. That's the one where he just can't. That's his Cleveland Guardians to his Tariq Skubal. Like, he's one of the best in the game. The Georgia's absolutely loaded. Stockton has some questions at quarterback, but he's fine. The overall roster is still ridiculous. But Alabama, I think, because we know the Alabama bias that we like to joke about, which is only partially a joke, the Alabama bias is real. I think they just made themselves a team in the playoff hunt right now. Like, I think at this point they control their playoff destiny, regardless of what happens to everybody else, because of the Bama bias. I think they just propelled themselves into that conversation regardless, assuming they don't wet the bed the rest of the way. Like, they still have to be good. But at this point, that win over Georgia, I think, is going to shake up a lot of things. Even with Florida State losing, I think that type of win, especially with the QB sneak turn torpedo, roughing the tomfoolery at the end of it, I don't know. I think Alabama might. I'm not gonna say they're back, but I think they're in control again. As where it felt like they were dead in the water. They were an 8-win team 2 weeks ago. Now I think they're back to being potentially a 10-win team.
Yeah, look, Alabama's going to be Alabama. They have the SEC schedule. That's always going to be a thing that's in your favor, even if you lose an early. Like no matter if you lose an early one or not. For Georgia, they can also come back from this as well, just like Alabama can. Alabama's sitting at 10th right now. They have Vanderbilt coming up next, who's a ranked opponent. Missouri, who's a ranked opponent. Tennessee, who's a ranked opponent. South Carolina, who probably will be ranked when they play them. LSU, who's a ranked opponent, and Oklahoma, who's a ranked opponent. And then Eastern Illinois, we don't count them. And then Auburn, we probably don't count them as well if you're Alabama. But you know what? It's going to be an interesting run of it for Alabama. If Ty Simpson could continue to play and do what he just did, I think this answers a lot of questions for Alabama fans. I think they should know by now that Alabama, by nature, since Nick Saban came in, they're not just going to roll over anymore. There might be moments where they roll over, but they're not going to disappear. They're still a powerhouse. You still have Ryan Williams out there. You still have studs on defense. They're a 5-star factory. That's just what they are. You have 5 stars sitting behind 5 stars. You're still there. You don't have the 6 5-stars sitting behind each other. That's what Nick Saban did. You only have 2 5-stars sitting behind each other, or 5 and a 4. Like, oh, I'm sorry, you have first world problems now. No, you know what? Alabama will be just fine after that win, especially. But Georgia, on the flip side, Kirby just can't figure it out. This Gunnar Stockton situation, it's hard because at times he looks great. At times he's like, wow, you are definitely a farm boy out here playing football. Like, it's tough. And I say that as a guy who grew up around farms and knows quite a few farm boys who play football. It's tough to want to like pick them because of Gunnar Stockton. And that's a weird thing to say, but I've talked about it before. It's like, it always felt like this team just has a bus driver at quarterback. They don't have a race car driver at quarterback. I don't need a race car driver every time, but I would like somebody who can at least step into a NASCAR car and steer it to victory if I need to. Right now with a bus driver, it's like, maybe I could, but I'm going to need some help whipping this thing around. Like, it doesn't feel great with Gunnar Stockton, and that's the most car references I think we've ever had on a show. So, it doesn't look great for Gunnar Stockton, and their defense looked weird against Alabama, like they always look against Alabama. I think just sometimes Kirby forgets which shade of red he's supposed to be coaching, and he thinks he's coaching the one that looks a little more pink, but he's always wrong. So maybe he needs to fix that. But I don't know, man. It was a good game. Again, 24-21. Hard to like hate on this one. Probably should have picked it for our pick'ems for Belly Up, but I decided not to, and don't really regret it too much. But could have done it. It was a good game. Alabama sets up for the rest of the season. Georgia, they'll be fine.
Absolutely. And you kind of mentioned Georgia. They have an interesting schedule moving forward. I mean, you got Auburn, you got Kentucky, you have Florida in there. You got Ole Miss. That's the huge one. And you got Texas, though, and Georgia Tech, which is always weird. So they have some options, too. I think they're fine as long as they take care of business. That Ole Miss one's going to be really tricky because I think Ole Miss is interesting. We also had the LSU game where they had a very – Lane Kiffin lied to us about the over, so that's why we're not going to spend as much time on it because we're still mad at him for lying to us about
Yeah, Lane, what's up with that?
Like you had one job, Lane, and this is what you did to us. And then you diagnose weeks with tempo after throwing up. Like, we can't be having this. But Georgia's very interesting. I'm very curious to see what they're going to do. In Alabama, you laid out the schedule. The path is right there. There's got to be Alabama at this point. And
you control your destiny.
That's all they got to do. And you just got to get in there. And Ryan Williams has to have more than one 100-yard game in the season, and they'll be good to go. But we talked a little bit about Ty. Okay.
I'll say this is why kids go to the SEC. If anybody ever still questions why the SEC continues to get 5-star recruits, is Alabama's situation. You have a bad loss early in the season, or it looks like a bad loss, but then you get a win against Georgia, a top-ranked Georgia, a top 10-ranked Georgia, and now you literally control your destiny. There are 4 teams in the SEC that control their destiny today. And how many other conferences can say that 4 teams control their own destiny?
Big Ten is maybe the only one that can get close.
Only one. And it's really, realistically, it's 3. Because, well, actually 2. You really can say Ohio State and Oregon right now. Because Indiana, they can kind of control their own destiny, but they also need some teams to kind of stumble in front of them. You need an Ohio State to stumble. You need a Oregon to stumble. You can affect both of them, but not well. And then Penn State definitely needs people to stumble too. So it's like, it's a tough one. It's like, this is why kids go to the SEC, is they want the opportunity. And this is their
I think you're
opportunity.
going to see 8 teams in the playoffs from those 2 conferences. Of the 12 teams, I feel like you could reasonably see 8 from just those 2. Then the other 4 spots are filled in amongst the remaining 3, however they decide to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Which, I'm not saying it's a bad thing because sometimes that's how you get the best teams. And you mentioned Ty Simpson, one heck of a game for him. The question is, has he propelled himself into a certain category that has become a weekly part of our show? That is Kelcey's Heisman hierarchy, as we now have Kelcey's top 3 guys trying to host the most coveted award in college football in New York. Kelcey, how does week 3 stand after a chaotic week amongst the award participant chasers?
Yeah, before I pop this list up, I just have a statement to make for all of the people that were on my list last week. Only one of you survived, and it wasn't because one of you wasn't bad. You weren't terrible, but you weren't great at all. The other one, well, congratulations on your career record, but your game against Auburn was not great. So there is one still remaining from my list last week, and I did also say last week that I would eventually admit when I felt wrong about a certain individual. So without further ado, let's talk about that individual for all of 10 seconds. Yes, I have Carson Beck here. He's here. He's a Heisman Trophy candidate. Absolutely. We're moving on. Number 2, Ty Simpson. As you just mentioned, Ty Simpson has come back and what they're doing at Alabama has been impressive. And despite the loss to Florida State, which doesn't look that bad anymore, despite that, he still looks good. He is slinging the rock all over the place. This isn't the Alabama teams like A.J. McCarron had, where somehow he was a Heisman Trophy candidate when he handed the ball off 27 times. Never will understand that. But Ty Simpson is a legitimate quarterback. He can run, he can throw, he can diagnose defenses, which I think is a more impressive part. He's a more dynamic quarterback than I've seen for Alabama in a while. And I don't consider Tua to be a dynamic quarterback. I think he was a good college quarterback. Jalen was a good college quarterback, but they're not dynamic in their ability to read defenses. Maybe Jalen was a little more so polished in reading, but he didn't have the polish and the arm talent like Ty Simpson does. And this is something unique for Alabama. So it's been a long time since I've seen an Alabama quarterback who can sling the rock like this. And it is impressive to watch, honestly. And then also watching him escape the pocket. It's refreshing for once to see an Alabama quarterback move around and not be a statue back there. So Ty Simpson is up there for me, number 2. As I mentioned, Carson Beck at number 3. And at number 1, this is the only one that remains, is Dante Moore. He continues to show why he's that good. The game against Penn State, it just shows you how good he can be. I think it's easy to want to write somebody off in a close double overtime game where, yeah, you got a mistake at the end, but you were bailed out by your own defense. Sure, maybe people want to harp on him for that, but what about the other, the other overtime or the other 4 quarters of play where he looked really good? Oh, what about the previous 3 games in the season? Looked pretty good too. Yeah, Dante Moore still is, to me, number 1 until proven otherwise. Marcel Reed is still in an honorable mention category here, as is Fernando Mendoza. I think Fernando Mendoza can easily step right back into this with a big game against Oregon this weekend, just like Dante Moore can kind of assure himself of a Heisman Trophy spot in New York with a big game against Indiana. It's a very unique situation where you have those 2 matching up so early, but you also have those 2 matching up with implications on the line for their teams. So you're going to see the best of those 2. You're also going to see Marcel Reed going up against the rest of the SEC schedule and proving he can be there. Ty Simpson, the same thing. We just listed off those rankings. The only one I see here that is a problem potentially staying in this list is Carson Beck, and it's not going to be because Carson Beck can't perform against the teams they have left on their schedule. He should be able to perform. He should be that guy. But I think Carson Beck is going to be a victim to players being better than him, playing better talent and being better overall. I think that's where the difference is going to be overall when you look at where this finishes. But today, yeah, I'll admit it. I've been wrong so far to Carson Beck. Maybe it's not fair of me to not put Carson Beck up here. So, Jared, you can stop texting me and blowing up my phone about it. Carson Beck is here. He's in my top 3. He'll be gone next week when inevitably we have great matchup with Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore. Sorry, it's the fact of the matter. Unless he goes out for 300 and 3 touchdowns and no picks, in which case he'll stay.
But I'm gonna focus on Dante Moore, who's been number 1 pretty much every single week, if I'm not mistaken. And if he performs against Indiana, puts on a show, is awesome. I feel like he's gonna lock himself in the top 3, barring an absolutely ridiculous crash. Ty Simpson, kind of the same thing. You got some opponents coming up where you can really stamp yourself, especially if, like, we think Alabama's kind of started to click for him a little bit. Like the light switch seemed to flip. Like last year, it flipped off after the Georgia game. Maybe this Georgia game flipped it back on. So I'm very there's a lot there that's very interesting with them. And Carson Beck, as you mentioned, I think he might have to overperform a little bit just because of the schedule differences. And there are guys like Jeremiah Smith that are on this. Marcel Reed, we're not talking about. John Mateer, if he comes back and isn't gone for 5 weeks, we'll see. But he was probably ruled out for now with the conveniently timed hand injury. We'll see. There are still guys like Arch Manning could potentially get himself in there. The numbers are starting to bounce back. Maybe he does it against some good opponents. There's
CJ Carr is making a move. He was actually listed as the biggest mover by lines so far. He's now in the plus 2,000s away from, I think he was like plus 5,500 going into last week. So like Jeremiah Love, also Notre Dame guy. I was saying those two have made the biggest push. They're both like plus 220 or 2,200 plus 2,300. They've made a push into the conversation here where we're talking, Jeremiah Smith is a plus 1,000 odds. So it's not like they're that far off of the odds here. It's very interesting to see coming down the stretch. And, I talked about this when I did the first one. It's like, it's hard sometimes to do early season Heisman hierarchy because it will change. But now we're really starting to see the top 6, 7, 8 guys. The problem is these 6, 7, or 8 guys right now are pretty good. And then they play each other here for most of them. So it's going to be very interesting. And like you said, Carson Beck is probably the odd man out in all of those situations because he's not going to be playing a Ty Simpson. He's not going to play a Dante Moore. He's not going to play a Fernando Mendoza. So he doesn't get to match up with those talents. His best bet is matching up against Cade Klubnik or Kevin Jennings. Those are his 2 best bets, who are both well out of the Heisman Trophy candidacy right now. And
they've played themselves out of it a little bit, unfortunately.
Like Carson, good luck, man. I put you in here, though, because I do respect what he's done so far this season. He hasn't messed it up. And that was the one thing I always talked about with him at Georgia. He tended to mess it up more often than he did. And he's shown he can't mess it up. He's had a lot of wide receiver talent to help him, but I will admit I've been wrong.
Hey,
but I haven't been that wrong.
It's a long season and anything can happen for sure. We'll see if this Heisman hierarchy is the same next week or if it shakes up. Let us know down below who your top 3 is for your Heisman ballots so far, with roughly a month into the season now. So we're 4 weeks in, plenty of time for things to change. But that's going to wrap it up here for the tip-off, which is going to now take us into the main event. And for the main event, we're heading to the National Football League. We're going to start with one of the biggest games of the week that ended in one of the biggest disappointments. Is the Ravens are clobbered by the Kansas City Chiefs yet again. That is now 1-6, I believe, in the Lamar versus Patrick Mahomes era. And Lamar got banged up in that as well with the hamstring injury, potentially going to miss a couple of weeks. We'll see. Nothing's confirmed 100% for sure yet, but he did come out in the third quarter. Game was already to wrap at that point, but Ravens fall to 1-3. Worst defense in the league statistically, if not, sorry, they're 31, not 32. So second worst defense in the league statistically. And now guys are getting injured on top of it. Matabike is out for the season with a neck injury. Marlon Humphrey's banged up. Everyone besides Kyle Hamilton's banged up at this point, really. I'm not going to say the Ravens are cooked because, well, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Steelers later, even though they're 3-1 at the top of the division. The Bengals are a mess. The Browns are the Browns. So I won't say that the Ravens are cooked yet, but it's starting to feel an awful lot like the Steelers might be hosting a playoff game at this point, because if Lamar's going to miss even 2 weeks, let alone 3, I don't know if they're going to be able to climb back out of this. It feels like the Ravens are in some serious danger. Maybe they sneak in as a wild card team because the rest of the AFC is also kind of a weird catastrophe, but it's not looking good in Baltimore right now. It's mostly because that defense, you could be bad and be like 20th, and we'll be like, okay, with Lamar in that offense and just give Derrick Henry the ball more than 8 times, which I don't understand. You play the Chiefs and you forget to run the ball every time. I don't get it. I don't get it. 8 carries for Derrick Henry should be illegal. I think they could be fine, but if that defense was in the 20s, bad. But it being at 31, they need to flip a switch. They need to find a switch and they need to flip it, and that switch also has to include Lamar getting a new hamstring yesterday.
Yeah. No, this has been rough. Defense is bad. It's as bad as it's bad. Number 2 overall bad defense, as you mentioned. Thank God for the Cowboys, right? But yeah, it's rough, man. They're giving up all the points. They're giving up all the yards. Take your pick. That defense does not look like a Ravens defense we've seen, but they do kind of look exactly like I was afraid of. And I said this last week, slow. They continue to look slow. And it's not like a Kyle Hamilton fault. Like, Marlon Humphrey needs to stop being one-on-one with players.
And stop being injured.
This is crazy. I can't keep watching Marlon Humphrey try to guard somebody one-on-one. He looks like a statue as somebody's running by him. And it's not like I'm running. It's not like Tyreek's running by him. Well, was running by him. But it's more like Mark Andrews level speed. and I hate to use his own teammate, but we're not talking about super speed guys here that are blowing Marlon Humphrey out of the water. We're talking about guys that are considered normal for receiver speed, and he just looks like a statue, and that can't keep happening. You know, you got all these reinforcements in for defensive help, and yet none of them are working. Something has to be wrong here. I don't know what's wrong defensively, but it's not great. Also, you're top 10 worst in turnover differential. That's not great. It's not bad. It's -2, but this early in the season and you're already posting a -2 differential. This is the Ravens. This is what they do. They get the ball back so Lamar and Derrick Henry can just run all over you. And like you said, now we have to worry about Lamar. Is he going to be healthy? Derrick Henry looked better, but the rest of the offense didn't look good. And it's going to be scary to see what they do with or without Lamar. How banged up is Lamar? We'll still have to wait and see till Thursday. But it's a situation where you're concerned. If you're a Ravens fan and if you're a Harbaugh, you're a little bit more concerned because this is something that you don't normally go through. Yeah, like you said, Steelers may be hosting a playoff game at the rate it's going. Aaron Rodgers in Acrisure Stadium or whatever the heck they want to call it anymore.
On Heinz Field.
Yeah. Asterisk at Heinz Field. You know, it's going to be an interesting thing to see. But yeah, I don't love it right now. Maybe Jake Browning's going to host a playoff game at the rate we're going. We don't know, but it's not great if the Ravens continue the path they're on.
If Jake Browning's hosting a playoff game, I'm taking the opponent immediately. I don't even care I don't care who that 5 seed is they're playing. I'm taking them. But what's really concerning about that -2 as well, the Ravens don't really turn the ball over a lot, and you're still -2, which means you're not taking the ball away. And Derrick Henry's had a couple of key fumbles this year, obviously, which have stuck out. Lamar's been pretty much turnover free until this Chiefs game, honestly. That was the one that kind of fell off. But that's what worries me is they don't take the ball away. And when they do, it's literally just against the Browns. Like, you didn't take it away against the Bills, really. They didn't have a takeaway in that game that comes to my mind. If they did, it was maybe they had one. I don't think you took the ball away from the Lions either. And you didn't take it away from the Chiefs either. Like, it's your entire takeaways is from the Browns. So that shouldn't even count at this point with what's been going on there. So it can be turned around because luckily I'm still skeptical with the Steelers long term. The Bengals are a mess. You don't have Joe Burrow anymore, and we just talked about the Browns. I'm not here to poop on them the whole time. So there is a path to get there, and there's not a whole lot of clarity in the AFC. The AFC is kind of a mess right now as a whole. So there is chance, but they got to figure it out yesterday. So if they have some, and I'm worried that John Harbaugh's job might be on the line this year, just because the amount of years in a row they've been a preseason favorite to get to the Super Bowl, and they have won. They haven't even beat the other heavyweights of the AFC. They haven't beaten the Bengals. They haven't beaten the They haven't beaten the Bengals, the Bills, or the Chiefs in those playoff games either. They beat the brakes off of the Texans and the Steelers. And so that's what kind of worries me at this point is when you're considered the favorite coming into the year in a lot of cases, like, or one of those, you're Super Bowl or bust at that point. They haven't quite done that. But what's kind of interesting too, as we mentioned the Browns, we're going to poop on them one more time, is they will be having a new starting quarterback. This week, it looks like second in the NFL's leading turnovers. Joe Flacco will be getting benched for Dylan Gabriel. So I'm going to point out 2 ironies. One, Shedeur Sanders reportedly said no to going to the Ravens. Well, he'd have been starting faster on the Ravens than he is for the Browns at this point. So maybe didn't think that one through too well. That you shouldn't be telling. I understand the thought of you're never going to play over Lamar, but look how life works out, right? Life comes at you quick. Yeah. 2, I'm really curious to see if it's Joe Flacco was kind of the issue, because we kind of saw it last year, the Colts, and even this year. He had that one magical run in 2023 that was fun, but he got really old after that really quickly. And now you're putting Dylan Gabriel in there against the Vikings. That's a Vikings team coming off a loss too. Yeah, that's gonna be rough. I feel for this one. I don't like this for Dylan Gabriel. I don't like it for Flacco. I don't like it for anybody. I don't like the Vikings on short notice as a rookie quarterback who's 5'4". So I have a feeling it's gonna be a rough debut for him. So we'll see. I could be wrong. I thought that with Jackson Dart dealing with the Chargers would be a rough one, but you never know. Things can happen. But looks like Dylan Gabriel starting quarterback for the Browns, and Shedeur could have been starting for the Ravens this week. But alas, here we are in a different timeline.
Yeah, hey, it is what it is, right? I don't blame Shedeur for saying no to the Chiefs, saying no to the Ravens. I would have said no to them as well as a quarterback. Because let's be honest, they're young guys. They're going to be healthy for the most part. You're like, why do I want to sit behind them my whole career?
Well, maybe if you were a first-round guy to that, but by the time you get to that 3rd, 4th, 5th round,
by round 3, I'm like, just call me. I don't care. I'll say yes to anybody. Then again, I mean, he also said no to the Browns, and here he is in Cleveland, still number 3 on the depth chart. So not great. But I will say this about the Browns, just something to think about. Number 1 defense in the league. They have given up the least amount of yards.
Problem is that 31st or 32nd ranked offense has been a problem where the
Yeah,
entire
the
offense
number 2
is just somehow falling down forwards.
the number 2 worst turnover differential, -6, by the way, even with two picks.
I want to see them use both running backs too this week. You're dealing with Minnesota and that kind of thing. Use Dylan Sampson and Quinshon
All of
Judkins.
them.
Like,
Use all of them.
just use Jerome Ford too. Like, find a way to use all of them. You have 2 tight ends in Fan and Njoku. Use both of them. Your receiving core is okay. I mean, Jerry Judy's all right. Cedric Tillman's all
You have
right.
a fan and an Njoku. You can be okay in the receiving core.
I think you do a lot of good damage in like 12 personnel or multiple running backs and move. I think you do condensing a lot, especially dealing with that Vikings pure chaos, changing it all up all the time. I think it's better to be safe than sorry, but we'll see what they do. I'm very curious. I want to see what that spread is as we get closer to time and if Gabriel is confirmed. But we talked about Dylan Gabriel's playing quarterback. Who we know won't be playing the rest of the year, though, is Tyreek Hill is on Monday Night Football. Very gruesome leg injury. Whole body goes right, leg goes left. He got surgery, which surprisingly they were able to fix all of it in a single surgery. So the torn ligaments and the knee dislocation all in a single surgery. So the goal is it looks like he might be back next year, but we'll start with this part of the question is, I don't know if he'll ever be quite the same again, though. As somebody who depends so much on his speed, his quickness is being literally a cheetah. I think it's going to take a step off of him at this point in his career because he's an older cheetah. It's still faster than everybody else somehow. But I'm worried about how you come back from this injury if you could he jukes backwards every time he catches the damn ball because he can get away with it. He spins when he turns upfield. He does everything a little bit different because he can. And it's fine until something like this happens. So I think he'll still be fine. I just don't know if he'll be cheetah anymore, I don't know. We'll see. He was clapping on the way off the field, so he knows he's getting $73 million guaranteed, I guess. So he ain't tripping, but that's rough. I don't know if we'll ever see Tyreek quite the same again. Maybe he does, but it's hard for me to see it when you have that kind of gruesome leg injury this late into your career for someone who depends on so much of those quick twitch muscle fibers, that speed that feels like Hunter Renfrow when this happened, where it's like, okay, I think he'll be fine since he's not running away from anybody anyway. He just has to be able to turn on a dime. Now, I don't know. Maybe Tyreek's going to have to be a possession guy while Jalen Waddle turns into the deep threat, which means maybe Jalen Waddle will get the ball more often, but I digress.
Malik Washington.
It'll be Malik Washington, yeah. Or to be Darren Waller doing the deep threat now.
Yeah, no, look, okay, as somebody who's gone through major knee injuries, not a dislocation with my tears, that was awful to watch. I need to say that first. And say what you will about the guy off the field, on the field, you never want to see a player go through that. That was atrocious. You hate to watch it. The fact is that he was already slowing down. You don't speed up as you get older. That has been proven time and time again. You become more intelligent with how you run your routes. You become more intelligent with how you set up a defender. But for Tyreek, he's never had to do that, really. Even as he's gotten slower, he's still faster than everybody, so he still can rely on just burning past people, running faster across the field to get on a drag route just to get open. That's what he did. We were talking about it before the injury, and we talked about how many times we watch him spin the wrong way and just gets away with doing the wrong spin or wrong juke or he's going the wrong direction so many times. It's like that's a mentality you've gained over years of just being faster and quicker than everybody. That's not going to be able to happen as well when you come back from injury. Yes, you can still come back and be healthy, but your reliability on your legs is going to become a lot harder to believe in when you're trying to plant and you are coming back in rehab and you take that first step and you're like, ow, that's not comfortable. And you have to adjust while you're coming back into rehab. And now your brain's going to be immediately like, I can't trust this. And that's the hardest part of this whole conversation is coming back. The rehab part of it is the hardest part. As somebody who has not made it well through rehab for my knees, I can tell you that it is the hardest part. And yes, I'm not a professional athlete. But man, when you're a professional athlete and you're guaranteed money and you don't have to come back right away, I don't know if he's coming back right away. I don't know if he's going to come back as healthy. He already knows his career's coming closer to an end. It's a situation where the guy's gone through so much to get here. I don't know if this is the thing that he wants to deal with right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can come back with. But I am concerned. I think everybody should be concerned about how healthy he'll come back. I think he's going to give all the same answers, though. The Tua is going to give the same answer. yeah, he's going to come back fighting. He's going to be ready to go. He's rare and ready to go. He's already in rehab after the surgery, which, by the way, fun fact for everybody who hears that comment, you are forced to go to rehab the day after your surgery, just so everybody's aware. So
Absolutely. And the basically one word part of this is: are the Dolphins back, or was that just them surviving the Jets in a mid-off? Are the Dolphins back though? Are they back on track?
I don't know if they're back on track.
Hmm.
Again, you could have been if Tyreek was fully healthy, but you also got a Jets team that's slacking right now. They're not doing great. They're doing literally their offensive line looked awful outside of Membo, and even Membo didn't do great last night. Actually, he ended up with more hands in his face than I think anybody else in the world. But it's I don't know, man. Justin Fields is having to run for his life. We always hear Sam Darnold talk about the ghost he always saw in New York. I understand it. It's like a New York problem when it comes to the Jets, and I feel bad for every Jets fan having to deal with that. But yeah, I don't know if they're back, the Dolphins, but congratulations, you beat the Jets.
They had their moments against the Bills. You beat the Jets. I got to see a little bit more for them as well, especially without Tyreek. How does that change the offense? Maybe it makes it better in a way. Maybe it makes it worse. I don't know. We'll have to see. And as far as the Jets, I don't know. Everything they do is easy. Everything looks so hard. Even like, oh wow, that great run that Justin Fields had. He had to roll right, roll left, outrun DBs in and out, and sort of like everything is just hard looking. Completing passes is hard, running is hard, blocking is hard. Just seems so difficult when you see the good teams do something. It looks effortless.
Yeah, you mentioned that run, by the way, and we talked about this when this happened. How stupid is it that you don't get a holding call on something as silly as a backyard run scramble drill, but you get a holding call on a simple 2-yard dive 3 times? Like, guys, can we not figure this out? Can we just not figure out that we don't grab outside the shoulders? We let go when the guy starts falling. It's not hard. It's not a hard thing to do. Just don't wear your gloves if that's what's sticking to the guy. You'll be fine. I promise you. It's ridiculous. I can't watch this offensive line for the Jets anymore.
Caleb Downs, you are about to be a Jet because Aaron Glenn will not say no to that one, regardless if they pick number 1 or not. Welcome to because they need to learn how to stop somebody because that defense has been
welcome to
atrocious.
MetLife, where they bring ACLs to rot.
Yeah, they need to get out of Jersey or just get a better stadium that's not cooked. But speaking of cooked, now we're going to talk about a bad team there. We're talking about some good teams now, or are they good? We're going to talk legit or frauds, going down a list of teams that have been off to a strong start, but can they be sustainable? The aforementioned Pittsburgh Steelers from earlier, are they legit or are they frauds? How are we feeling about Pittsburgh?
Originally, I'd say no, not legit, but it feels now they're a contender. I'm not going to say they're fully like that team, but they're definitely a contender right now. And it hurts me because I definitely didn't pick them to do well.
I'm going to say they're legit as well. I think defensively, I'm still concerned. But I think outside of that game against the Vikings and Carson Wentz being Carson Wentz, really, the defense still can have some holes with how much money spent on it. Against the Patriots, they got thoroughly outplayed. The Patriots just fumbled 5 times because they kept giving it back. And it wasn't really forced turnovers all the time. It was from Andre Stevenson. Oh, goodness. Oh, my gosh. Just tomfoolery. But I think the offense is definitely a lot better. DK is an upgrade over George Pickens, at least in the black and gold. I don't know. Maybe not if it's the Cowboys, George Pickens. That's a different story. But if DK and the black and gold works, Aaron Rodgers is a clear upgrade over Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, not movement-wise, but everything else. The offensive line for the first time in a while is actually pretty good too. Like, it's not great, but Broderick Jones and the guys they've drafted the last few years, it's no longer bottom 10. It's like middle of the pack. It's not bad. And they haven't even had to try running.
B15. As if you could just be 15th, you're fine.
Exactly. And the exoticness, Aaron Rodgers has seen all of it. So it might just be like he's had success against Brian Flores. So maybe the confusing stuff just didn't confuse him. And that's why, because that's kind of the Vikings defense is confuse you. And then offensively, well, not much you can do when that offense is chaotic. So we'll see. But for now, I'm going to give them the legit category. Maybe not Super Bowl legit, but right where they normally are, 10 wins. But this time they might host the playoff game levels of legit. But next up, we're going to the 3-1 Indianapolis Colts. It's a loss to the Rams, very competitive, 14 points left on the board in the most Colts way possible against a very, very competitive Super Bowl contender caliber team in the Rams. Daniel Jones, they finally turned the ball over and punted multiple times in a game. Colts contenders, legit or frauds?
Yeah, they're still a contender to me. You're in the AFC South 1. 2, you have the number 3 overall quarterback and the number 1 running back in the league. I feel pretty good. Especially since you're about to go into some AFC South matchups that I feel even better about here soon. So I feel good about the Colts. I'm going to say legit contender for their division for sure. Yeah, that's about as far as I'm going to go with that prediction, but it's for the division for sure.
I would say absolutely, but the problem is they still keep throwing out the corpse of Xavier Howard, of what was once a great corner, but is now literally just a corpse. They need to fix that. You can't let him guard Puka Nacua one-on-one. That does not work, as we saw by 16 catches yesterday.
To be fair, anybody guarding Puka right now is not working.
That's fair, but it's even worse when you leave him on there because he also had issues with everybody else leading on the season. And you cannot. And then that pass rush, where is it? Like the Matthew Stafford was sitting back there like he's back in Georgia. He's like, wow, this is kind of nice. I'm 100 years old and I'm not even under duress. So they got some stuff to work on offensively. They're legit. Tyler Warren's awesome. I'm going to give them almost the exact same thing as the Steelers. They are legit under the right circumstances. And Alec Pierce has to be able to. Clearly, he makes that big of a difference as the deep threat because those deep passes don't seem to get intercepted when a white lightning is down there. But we're going to stick in the AFC South. Jacksonville Jaguars now 3-1, coming off a big win over the 49ers and leading the league in takeaways, if I'm not mistaken, for the Jaguars as well. I'm not going to say winning in spite of Trevor Lawrence, but winning regardless, I guess you could say that. And regardless of Brian Thomas Jr.'s slow start, and regardless of not knowing what they're doing with Travis Hunter at this point, I don't get it. But Travis Etienne, Bajal Tootin, the offensive line and the defense have got them to 3-1. Legit or frauds?
Again, AFC South, so I'm going to put you as a contender. For the Jags, I'm just looking at their stats here. Yeah, number 1 in turnover differential and +9. By the way, also top 5 in points against defensively. So they've given up the 5th least amount of points with 72. Unfortunately, their offense is still struggling with only 92 points scored. So needs some work. But yeah, defensively, defense can carry you to the playoffs. That's not a shock to anybody, and especially in the South. If your offense can just be good enough. It seems to be where the Jags are. Yeah, we got a good enough offense with the savior back there at quarterback, we hope. But I'll say this, if Travis Etienne continues to run the way he did and Tootin continues to do what he's doing, I feel a lot better. Brian Thomas Jr., I need to see him get some action. But, for now, the Jags are there. They're a contender for the division. But again, that's where I stop with my prediction for this team going any further than that. They're a contender for division, but that's just the AFC South.
I'm going to be the first one to break it, and I'm going to give them the fraud check right now. I think in the AFC South, they, like you mentioned, that division is still poop, but they beat the brakes off the Panthers, who we now know are terrible, except when Michael Penix is throwing 18 pick sixes in a game. They lost to the Bengals. That was 50-50 Jake Browning and Joe Burrow, and you still got 3 picks on Jake Browning and lost that game. You beat the ghost of the Houston Texans, who we still what's going on there. And then you survived the 49ers with the most injuries in the NFL by far, that they have all siphoned the life force everyone else on the team to keep Christian McCaffrey healthy. That's the only thing I can think of at this point. I'm going to go ahead and call them frauds at this point because until Shane Waldron gets off that offensive staff, because that man is a curse to all very good wide receivers. He was in Seattle. JSN was an afterthought. He leaves. JSN is now a top 3 receiver statistically, give or take. He's in Chicago. Roma Dunze and DJ Moore are ghosts. He leaves. Roma Dunze as a top 5-ish receiver, and DJ Moore's still struggling to bounce back. That's how bad of an effect he had, as DJ Moore still trying to get rid of the Shane Waldron effect. Now he's in Jacksonville, and we just talked about what's going on with Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter. So I'm going to take the roundabout way and saying they're frauds in that case, and I need Trevor Lawrence to start looking a little bit sharper. He has moments. They're not winning in spite of him, but they're not winning because of him in any of these games. He's not making plays. It's more about the bad plays he's not making. It's lower than game manager, but it's not being drugged like an anvil at the same time. Like I need him to just a little bit more game manager, just a little bit more. But we're going to talk now. We're now talking about the team that they played in this most recent game, the San Francisco 49ers, who also find themselves at 3-1 in a weird tie at the top of the NFC West between everybody besides the Cardinals, because that division's awfully good right now. But Brock Purdy's banged up again. He comes back and then he's immediately hurt again after a very rough game. CMC is somehow just unbreakable at this point while everyone else is falling apart. Ricky Pearsall with a PCL injury. Jawan Jennings just got back and is a little dinged up. Kittle's on the injured list, as we mentioned. Bosa's out for the year with the torn ACL. You know what? I'm just tired of listening. There's probably more. I'm just tired of going down the injury list at this point. And you play the Rams on Thursday.
Jennings, yeah.
And you play the Rams in 10 minutes. So can we even call them frauds or legit at this point? I don't even know what to think of them.
Yeah, they're frauds. I'm going to be this is where I draw the line. This is my line in the sand. They're frauds. They've somehow escaped their way to 3-1. Everything I just said about the Jaguars, let's make it worse, right? You've given up more points per game, and you've scored less points per game. You are so bad offensively that you have only scored 80 total points. You are equal, or you are still just barely less than the Las Vegas Raiders right now. 77 points the Raiders have scored. So 80 for the Niners. And by the way, you are also third worst in the turnover differential conversation. So yeah, this is a fraud waiting to be exposed. They're just waiting for any team that can actually win a game to come in and just blow the doors off. And the fact that Jags beat them shows you where I thought about the Jags are being like, yeah, I guess you're contenders. And this is the line. This is the firm line in the sand where it's like, all right, well, here's my category of fraud. It is the Niners. They are there. This is such a fraud.
I'm going to agree with you. And what I also think is very funny is out of the 4 games played, 2 of them had a score of 26-21. That's just a random score to have done twice in 4 games. They won one of them and they lost the other one. But you mentioned like they squeaked by Seattle to start the season. That was more Sam Darnold making a boo-boo. They survived the Saints. They survived the Cardinals by a point. Then they gave it away to Jacksonville. Jacksonville survived them. They, with Brock Purdy banged up too with the turf toe injury and everything else, they might just, maybe they're better with Mac Jones. I don't know. It's very weird. And they don't have a bye week until week 14, I believe it is. Like they have a late bye week on top of it. So it's going to be tough for them to get right. I don't know what else to say when you get that injured. I mean, if they can pull this through and still be as effective as we thought they'd be in the preseason before everybody fell apart, then maybe Kyle Shanahan earns himself coach of the year. But as of right now, they're fraudulent until they at least have a help, until they can figure out until they could just get out of the infirmary. Like they'll say fraudfirmary, I guess, infraudery, whatever. Like they're sending them to the hospital. But we're going to round it out with their in-division rival, the Seattle Seahawks, also at 3-1, rattling off 3 straight since that opening week loss to the 49ers, including wins over the Steelers and the Cardinals. So are the Seahawks, now led by Sam Darnold, McDonald, and JSN, now that he's escaped Shane Waldron, are the Seahawks legit or are they frauds?
Yeah, absolutely. They're legit. Look, I just said the Steelers were legit, and they've beaten the Steelers, right? The Niners, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But Seahawks, 111 points scored, 67 points given up. That's a pretty telling stat when it comes to how good that team actually is. And also, +1 in the turnover differential. You need a positive turnover differential to win your division. I don't think a team has ever won their division with a negative differential. I might be wrong, but I feel like that's a well-recognized stat. Maybe I'll have to look that up. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, it's been an impressive run for the Seahawks. And Sam Darnold, yes, shaky at times, has improved, but they are continuing this trend of scoring rushing touchdowns every week, which if you go back to our predictions for my prediction for this team, that's the most important category because there's money on the line for this.
There's absolutely money on the line. And since I think Sam Darnold, since those first 6 quarters, been really strong. K9's really good. Charbonnet's been solid. They haven't been a high dynamic necessarily, but they have been quite effective. And that defense is so good. Mike McDonald has them clicking, but guys like Byron Murphy, Devin Witherspoon, Nick Emenwari, they just got so many versatile pieces to the point where Tariq Woolen's basically on the board. Like, hey, somebody want Tariq Woolen? It's like, who's had his issues, I think, because he has not, since his rookie year, he's kind of fallen off the cliff, but still a talented guy that can get after the ball. JSN's their leading receiver with 402 yards. The next closest is the ghost of Cooper Kupp at 162. Then Elijah Arroyo at 82 and AJ Barner at 81. So it's a very one-sided passing game, and they're still finding ways to get it done. I was wrong. I thought they downgraded going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold, but so far through a month, that is not the case. Sam Darnold has been way better than Geno Smith because Geno keeps throwing it to the other damn team. He leads the NFL in picks, and I don't know what happened because now he looks like he's playing with the Jets again. I don't get it, but
I know what happened. I picked up Geno on my fantasy football team.
Oh, damn it. Why didn't you tell me that before we did our preseason predictions? Like, that's what did it. But.
Oh, no. I picked him up during week 1. So
you cursed them and destroyed it because they haven't won since then. So that's exactly what it is. But Seattle's legit. I think that defense causes some problems. Mike McDonald's firing on all cylinders defensively, offensively. There's no Shane Waldron there. I'm going to continue going back to that. So JSN has been completely unlocked, and they have 2 really good running backs, and Sam Darnold's running Kevin O'Connell's rejuvenation camp for mid-aged quarterbacks is revolutionary. Daniel Jones was there for a few months, saved his career. Sam Darnold was there for a year, saved him. Like, my goodness. So I think they're legit too.
No wonder A-Rod wanted to go to Minnesota.
Not gonna lie, with the way he's playing with Pittsburgh, that might have been scary in hindsight. I mean, maybe we're all lucky he didn't go there after all to complete the Brett Favre arc properly.
Maybe it's not a KOC thing. Maybe it's said it's a Justin Jefferson thing. Like, just the confidence of knowing you have a receiver out there makes you a better quarterback, whether he's actually out there or not. Maybe that's what it is.
I'm gonna say it's both of it. Like, not only do you have the KOC, but then you have the J Jet as nuke on top of it. Oh, and by the way, if he's not open, we're gonna scheme everybody else open.
Yeah.
And if they stop the scheme, that means he's out there one-on-one. So
Yeah. By the way, if he's not open, they have 3 guys covering him, so you got somebody open over here.
There's probably a Jordan Addison speeding his way across the field, or a TJ Hawkinson. Like, there's options regardless. They always have answers to everything. But I'm gonna say Seattle is legit, especially with how that defense has been playing and some of the looking at their schedule coming up. I think they have some very I don't want to say win. I'm going to say winnable games. Like, I think they could build some nice momentum moving forward, especially the 49ers injuries. They do have Tampa Bay, which is not really easy, but Jacksonville, Houston, Washington, and Arizona back to back. I think they could win a lot. They could do a good. I think they have a good stretch on there before they play the Rams in November.
Yeah, for sure. I think it'll be an interesting one. I don't think I've ever. Well, actually, I knew I was going to say this at one point in time. I felt like I was going to say this at one point in time this season. I wonder if the Vikings miss Sam Darnold right now.
At least a little bit. At least just a little. Yeah, just a touch.
I know your quarterback has a player of the week, though, so maybe you don't miss him too much.
Yeah, they
with 2 turnovers.
Isaiah Rodgers has scored just about as many. Other defensive players scored about as many touchdowns as that NFC Offensive Player of the Week. But I digress at that point. That one's an embarrassment. We've already complained about that. Go check out that episode if you want to see that one. But that's not going to take us.
Never forget.
Never gonna let it down. Never gonna let it go. But we talked Heisman. We now got to go to the NFL MVP ladder, and this is where things are going to get a little bit different because, well, everybody who was initially kind of balling, they kind of had a rough week this last week. All the guys that were on last week's MVP ladder, they struggled. So we're going to shake this thing. We're shaking up this week, and at the bottom, for the first time ever, we got a guy with technically a losing record on there. We are putting Dak Prescott at number 3. Leads the league, leads the NFL in passing yards with the literal worst defense, 4th in completion percentage and 1st in attempts. So it's not just Jameis Winston 50-50 balls up the sideline. He is moving the ball. When he throws it, it gets completed more often than not. 6 touchdowns, has been sacked only 6 times, so not even 2 full times a game with when you pass it that often. No CeeDee Lamb for the last week against the number 1 ranked defense, and had the best game he's played in years, arguably since his MVP caliber season a couple years ago. Maybe even better since you took out CeeDee Lamb. We saw what him and George Pickens did. George Pickens looked like somebody that's about to get paid a lot of money with what he did in that game. Kevontae Turpin looked good. And that was against the number 1 ranked defense. And we talked about it is basically what Joe Burrow was doing last year, just he doesn't have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins out there. He has just George Pickens right now. Jake Ferguson's all right, but
hey, just George is a pretty good just to have out there.
It's not as good as just T and Jamar, though. And he's asked to do the exact same thing with the league's worst defense and to basically go save us. The saving grace is, hey, we can get 3 from anywhere on the field. Problem is your defense is giving up 8. They're not even just giving up 7. They're finding ways to give up 8. They're finding a way to leave 1 second on the play clock at the end of the game. So that tie against the Packers, the fact that a 1 second, when he left the field, his team had a win or was winning with 40 points against the number 1 ranked defense and won a lot of people's consensus top 3 or 4 team in the game. So Dak, in a week where everybody else kind of wet the bed and you were on fire, congratulations. You made the 3rd spot. Will you stay here? Well, you can't go 1-2 and you can't be 1-3-1. You got to be at least 2-2-1 to keep it going. But for this week, you get in there basically a little bit of help to get you here. But moving on to number 2, who didn't really need a whole lot of help, but he got it anyway. Puka Nacua, leading the NFL in receiving by literally everything in receptions and targets and yards. The one thing he doesn't have is a lot of touchdowns. He does have a nice 50-yard rushing touchdown to tack onto it too. He is absolutely cooking. He's getting fed the ball. He's moving the chains. He's the lead blocker on some of these motion runs. He's getting end arounds. He's doing everything you could possibly need for a Rams team that is 3-1 and a big Jordan Davis away from being 4-0. So we're putting Puka Nacua at number 2. He absolutely obliterated that Colts secondary single-handedly, which is an indictment on the Colts for putting Xavier Howard one-on-one with him. But I digress. Puka Nacua is absolutely awesome and opens things up for Devontae, Tutu Atwell, the run game. Stafford, being 500 years old, isn't expanding the play as much. Puka Nacua has been absolutely awesome.
Yeah. By the way, he is 9 more receptions than the next closest. Sorry, 8 more receptions than the next closest, who, by the way, is Jake Ferguson. He is 7 more targets than the next closest. And he also has tied for the most amount of 40-plus plays this season, receiving-wise, with Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Who he has 101 more yards on top of him. So like he's been absolutely sensational, and he's doing it with Devontae Adams on the other side too. So you can't say, oh, they're force feeding him. No, he's making Devontae Adams' job easier at this point, and that's crazy to think about.
If it's telling, he is the only receiver within the top 5 that is under 14 yards per catch because he's catching short and long balls. He's at 12 yards per catch, which is tells you how many yards this man. He is averaging 25 more yards per game than the next closest person. That's crazy to me.
And think about how many times they just throw a screen and he's breaking tackles, and the amount of people he's running through the end of rounds. They use him like a fullback on any given moment too. Like he's been sensational across the board. If anyone that's not a quarterback is going to win this year, Puka's in the driver's seat for it.
He is 6th in the league in yards after contact, behind Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, Christian McCaffrey, Devin Achane, DK Metcalf, and Puka.
Yeah, basically 4 guys that catch screen passes and running backs and then get a lot of yards after catch. And then DK, who just had 87 of them on one single play this last week against the Vikings, which really spiked it. So Puka Nacua right now at number 2. Then at number 1, a little bit of not much of a surprise, but a mild surprise. We got Josh Allen back at the top. He's been fine for the most part this year. Like he hasn't been extraordinary minus that second half against the Ravens. But when Justin Herbert kind of fell apart a little bit against the Giants there, he wasn't bad, but he was not good. The 2 picks, losing the game to the Giants. Daniel Jones, the 2 picks, losing to the Rams. Granted, he had a 75-yard touchdown wiped off of. That probably would have made a big difference, but the rules is the rules. We're dealing with what we're dealing with here. Josh Allen still has 7 passing touchdowns, couple rushing, and he's not Jalen Hurts in the rushing touchdowns because James Cook leads the NFL in rushing touchdown. So he's not even poaching them like he's not a fantasy tush push merchant right now and still getting it done on the ground. They're arguably the best team in football when you factor in record as well. They've been awesome. They've done everything they need. Even against the Saints, they're a little slow out of the gate. Josh Allen throws a questionable pick. He's like, oh yeah, Josh Allen. Touchdown to Dalton Kincaid, shakes people out of their shoes. Where Josh Allen's taking the number 1 spot right now because Justin Herbert kind of fell. Daniel Jones kind of fell. Like there's not a whole lot of other guys do throw up there right now with what we've seen to start the year. Jordan Love kind of isn't quite in that conversation yet. Geno Smith throws way too many interceptions. Patrick Mahomes made a pretty good push, honestly, throwing 4 touchdowns. If he does that again next week, he's going to find himself in here. But MVPs are very interesting right now. All the guys that were kind of in cruise control early on slowed down a little bit. So Josh Allen could kind of take the spot as a placeholder for now. And Lamar, you can't get sacked 15 times when you're Lamar Jackson. You can't lose 107 yards on sacks. And it's not because your offensive line's bad. It's because you run around too damn much and try to make huge plays. But
his 10 touchdown to 1 interception ratio is not too bad.
That's great, especially with how few times he does throw the ball. The problem is how many drives stall because you get sacked. Like how many times you wait and wait and wait, you scramble, then Aiden Hutchinson trips you. He's in the conversation, but I can't put him in there. I already bent the rules getting 1, 2, and 1 Dak in there. I can't do 1 and 3. Like I got to draw the line somewhere, and it's already paper thin right now.
That's fair. I will say I'm kind of surprised Jared Goff isn't getting any love.
He's number 4, honestly. Like
okay.
I ran out of space. I ran out of space. If you'd have lit up the Browns just a little bit more, maybe I ran out of space.
I just keep saying we've talked about this before. I still think Jared Goff is the most underrated quarterback in today's game, with the fact that nobody respects what he's doing. And I know I have an Amon-Ra jersey right here. He's part of the reason why, but like, let's be honest, Jared Goff is throwing and slinging the rock to everybody and anybody under the sun. And yes, it helps having David Montgomery breaking off 60-yard touchdown runs as well as Jahmyr Gibbs doing exactly the same thing. Like, it's been an impressive run for the Lions. So that's why it kind of surprises me that Jared Goff isn't up here. But at the same time, I get it. We can only put 3 on here. As the person who just did the Heisman one, and I'm like, I could have 7 guys up here. I totally understand.
I wanted to give some love to non-quarterbacks too. We already know the award's going to go to a quarterback, but this is a different ladder. So I'm going to give a shout out to someone who is doing something so dominant here. Dak, what he did against that number 1 defense, I was like, all right, we got to give a little bit of love here. If you told me Jared Goff's 3 or 2, I'm not going to argue. Like I ran out of spots. I almost put Jared Goff 1. I just wanted to, if you're going to take that number 1 spot, I wanted just a touch more where he just comfortably beat the Browns because they're a well-oiled machine and the Browns are a catastrophe. So it's like, maybe if what he did to the Ravens was coming off of that, I think he might have jumped to the 1 spot. But Jared Goff's in that conversation. If I could have like 3.5, he's right there.
Yeah,
he's probably going to be there.
If you get the honorable mention here, it's Jared Goff.
Exactly. Like he is number 4. He's off next week. So chances are he might jump into the top 3 next week just because somebody else on this list is going to screw it up. So I'm joking. They're not actually off, but they are playing the Bengals. So that he might as well be off. He's going to be off by halftime at the way the Bengals have been playing. But this is what we have for this week's MVP ladder. Let us know down below who you have as the MVP, who is on your MVP ladder going into week 5. That's now going to do it for the main event, which will take us quickly into crunch time. And for crunch time, we're going to keep this one short and sweet and simple. UFC pay-per-views are officially back coming this week. They gave us a nice little long hiatus, but they have returned. So we will be talking UFC pay-per-views coming up this week. We got a big one, Magomed Ankalaev taking on Alex Pereira in the rematch, and Merab taking on Corey Sandhagen. Definitely tune for that one. On Friday, we'll be doing our predictions, bets, breakdowns, and everything in between. We have a pretty solid overall betting record so far on the season when it comes to these pay-per-views. Is it perfect? Well, it's better than the football ones have been for me.
My picking record this year has been awful. I apologize for that, but your picking record is pretty good.
The football ones have been rough for me, but we're 22 out of 30 when it comes to the UFC bets, including 1-5-0 pay-per-view. So you know what? We're going to give it a try this week. Be sure to tune in on Friday for that, but we can't wait for that. That is going to do it here for us on the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate y'all so much for joining us, and we will see you all again next week.